My daughter told me the best gift she could ever get was for me to disappear from her life, to cut her off completely, to never come back. I gave her that gift. I packed 2 suitcases, I blocked her number, and I drove 300 miles away without leaving a forwarding address. It took me 3 months to understand that when she said those words, she was trying to save my life. I'm sitting on a porch in Savannah, Georgia, as I tell you this. There's a jar of sweet tea sweating on the rail beside me, and the live oaks are dripping Spanish moss all the way down to the grass. It's the kind of morning I used to dream about when I was still teaching algebra to teenagers who didn't want to learn it. Peaceful, quiet, mine. But my hands are not peaceful. My hands are holding a piece of paper. It's been folded and unfolded so many times the creases have gone soft as cloth. The ink is smudged from where my thumb keeps running over it. 4 lines. 4 lines that were sitting in my coat pocket the whole time I hated her, and I never even knew they were there. My name is Loretta Mae Coleman. I'm 68 years old. I taught high school mathematics in Atlanta for 34 years, and if there's one thing a math teacher learns, it's that when the numbers don't add up, you don't blame the numbers. You go back and find the thing you missed. I missed something. I missed it standing in my own daughter's kitchen, holding a cake I'd baked with my own 2 hands, while she looked me dead in the eye and told me to get out of her life forever. Before I go on, I want to ask you something. If you're listening wherever you are in your kitchen, in your car, lying in bed because sleep won't come the way it used to do, me a small kindness and stay with me to the end. Because the woman I was 3 months ago and the woman I am today would not recognize each other. And somewhere in the middle of those 2 women is a lesson I paid for in a way I would not wish on anybody. Let me take you back to the worst birthday of my life. My daughter's 41st, the day I found out I was disposable. At least that's what I thought I found out. Let me tell you about Denise before I tell you about that day. Because if you only meet her the way I met her that afternoon, you'll hate her, and I can't have that. Not yet. Denise Renee Coleman came into this world 6 weeks early, weighing 4 pounds and 1 ounce with a set of lungs that never worked quite right. She was diagnosed with severe asthma before she was 2. I can still hear the sound of her fighting for air in the dark, that thin, whistling wheeze me sitting on the bathroom floor at 3 in the morning with the shower running hot so the steam could open her chest. Her daddy worked the overnight line at the plant, so most of those nights it was just the 2 of us. The inhalers and the nebulizer treatments cost more than our insurance would touch. So I sold my wedding ring. I did it quietly on a Tuesday at a pawn shop off Ponce de Leon, and I told my husband I'd lost it down the drain. He believed me for 11 years. When I finally told him the truth, he cried, and then he kissed my bare hand, and he said, "Loretta, you'd give this child the marrow out of your bones." I said, "Of course I would. She's mine." She was a bright girl, brighter than me, and I don't say that lightly. When she was 16, she came home with a form for a summer program in France, 3 weeks a homestay, a chance to use the French she'd been teaching herself off library CDs. It cost $12,000 I did not have. I mortgaged the little condo I'd bought with my mother's inheritance, and I paid it. At the airport, she hugged me so hard my feet came up off the floor, and she said into my ear, "You are the best mama in the whole world." I lived on that sentence for 25 years. I want you to understand that. I lived on it the way you live on a good meal. It kept me going long after the plate was empty. So when I tell you what she said to me on her 41st birthday, I need you to know it didn't just break my heart. It broke the last thing I had been living on. Now, there's something you have to understand about the months before that birthday, and I'll be honest with you, at the time I understood it all wrong. For about a year, my daughter had been pulling away from me. She stopped calling back. I'd leave a message on a Sunday and hear nothing until Thursday if I heard anything at all. When I did get her on the phone, her husband was always somewhere close. I could hear him in the background, that low, even voice of his, and she'd get short with me and say she had to go. Birthdays got forgotten. My 70th, well, my 68th came and went with a text message that read, "Happy birthday, Mama," and nothing else. No call, no card. From the girl who used to make me construction paper cards with glitter that got in the carpet for a decade. I decided she'd outgrown me. That's the story I told myself. She'd gotten rich, she'd gotten busy, she'd gotten a big house and a new last name and a husband who summered on somebody's boat, and her old mama with her clearance rack dresses had become an embarrassment. I told myself that story for a whole year, and every time it hurt, I made myself swallow it, because that is what mothers do. I was wrong about the story. But I want you to sit in the wrong version with me for a while the way I had to, because you can't understand the ending until you've believed the lie, the way I believed it. Her house was in a gated part of Buckhead, the kind of neighborhood where the lawns look ironed. 3 stories white brick, a magnolia tree out front the size of a building. I had helped buy that house. When she and Reginald put in their offer 5 years back, I put down $90,000 toward it, money from 34 years of teaching, plus the tutoring I did on Saturdays, plus a small inheritance from my sister. They asked me to co-sign the loan, and because I was on the loan, my name went on the deed too, as a partial owner. I didn't think a thing about it at the time. It was just paperwork. I'll tell you later how much that paperwork came to matter, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I drove up on the morning of her birthday with a red velvet cake on the passenger seatbelt fastened around the carrier like it was a grandbaby. I'd been up since 5 making it. Cream cheese frosting the good cocoa buttermilk, my mother's recipe, the one Denise used to lick off the beaters. On the seat beside it was a small box wrapped in silver paper. Inside was a strand of pearls that had belonged to my mother and to her mother before that. 3 generations of hard women who kept going. I thought she's 41 now, she's a mother herself. It's time these came to her. I want you to hold on to that cake and those pearls because I carried them into that house like an offering, and I want you to feel the weight of them. I rang the bell. I could hear the twins somewhere inside, Jaden and Zoe, 11 years old, my heart walking around outside my body in 2 pairs of sneakers. I heard footsteps. The door opened. Denise stood there in a silk blouse, her hair done, her nails, done everything about her, polished to a shine. And when she saw it was me, something in her face closed like a door in winter. "Oh," she said, "it's you. Not hi, Mama. Not a hug. It's you." Like I was a package she hadn't ordered. "Happy birthday, baby," I said, and I held up the cake in the little silver box, and I made my voice as bright as I could make it. "I brought your favorite, and I've got something special for you. You can put it on the counter," she said. She wasn't even looking at me. She was looking past me out toward the driveway like she was checking whether anyone had seen me come. I'm in the middle of something. I stepped inside. And here is the first thing I did not understand until much later, so I'll tell it to you exactly the way it happened, plain, and you can do with it what you like. As I passed her in the doorway, she reached out and brushed her hand quick against the pocket of my coat, my turquoise coat, the one I save for special days. I thought she was flicking a piece of lint off me. I remember thinking even now, even cold as she's being, she can't stand to see me with a spot on my collar. I actually felt warm about it for a second. That's how starved I was. I carried the cake through to the kitchen. Marble counters I'd paid for that renovation too, 4 years back, $11,000 when the old kitchen flooded. The twins were out back in the pool with an instructor. I waved at the window. Neither of them saw me. There was a teapot on the counter already steeping. Peppermint. I stopped when I saw it because peppermint is the only tea I can drink. My stomach can't take anything else, hasn't been able to for years, and Denise knows that. Everybody in the family gives me grief about it. And there it was, steeping 2 cups set out beside it. I remember looking at that teapot and feeling confused the way you feel when someone hands you a gift with one hand and slaps you with the other. I didn't say anything about it. I just set my cake down next to it. Denise came into the kitchen. She pulled a sparkling water out of the refrigerator, and she leaned against the counter and she said, "Mama, we need to talk." I knew that tone. She'd had it since she was little, the flat, careful voice she used right before she said something she'd been holding a long time. I sat down on one of the stools at the island. My heart was already going. "Of course, baby," I said. "Talk to me. Is something wrong? Whatever it is, we can—" "I've been thinking a lot lately," she said, cutting me off. "About my life, about what I actually want, about what would make me happy. And here's the second thing I missed." As she said it, her eyes flicked fast just once toward the closed door of the study off the kitchen. I thought it was nothing. A tick. Now I know there was a man behind that door, and I know exactly what she was afraid of. But that afternoon, I saw a woman glance at a door, and I thought about nothing but my own hurt. And I said, she set the bottle down. She looked right at me, and her face did something I had never seen on my child's face in 41 years. It wasn't anger. Anger I could have taken. It was something colder. It looked like she'd made a decision and hated it, and was doing it anyway. "The best gift I could get for my birthday," she said, slow spacing every word out like she was laying bricks, "is for you to disappear from my life. Completely. Cut it off. Don't call, don't come by, don't send anything. Don't come back." The kitchen went silent. Even the air conditioner seemed to stop. I heard my own blood in my ears. Denise, I whispered. Baby what? You heard me? Her voice didn't shake, but her jaw did, just barely. I'm tired, Mama. The phone calls, the drop-bys, the advice nobody asked for. I need you gone. I need room to breathe. I want to tell you I stood up with dignity. I didn't. I sat there on that stool with my mother's pearls and a silver box in my lap, and I felt every one of my 68 years land on me at once. 41 years of being her mother, the wedding ring, the mortgage, the nights on the bathroom floor, and this is what it came to. Disappear. Don't come back. I don't understand, I said. What did I do? Just tell me what I did and I'll fix it. You can't fix it by fixing it, she said, and for just a second her voice cracked down the middle, and I saw her eyes go wet. Then she pressed her lips together and it was gone. You fix it by going. I stood up. My legs weren't sure about it, but they held. And as I reached for my purse, I noticed one more thing, and I'm only telling you because I promised I'd tell you everything I saw. When she reached over to move my cake carrier out of her way, the sleeve of her silk blouse pulled back off her wrist and there was a bruise there. Yellow-green going old the size of a thumbprint. She saw me see it, and she yanked the sleeve down fast and folded her arms. I bumped it on the car door, she said before I could ask. I hadn't asked. Behind me, I heard little feet. Zoe came skidding into the kitchen in her wet swimsuit hair dripping, and she ran to me and grabbed my hand and looked up at me with those big serious eyes she has. And she said in a rush, low, almost a whisper, Grandma, don't forget to check your... Zoe. A man's voice even and quiet from the direction of the study. Come dry off, baby girl, now. Reginald. My son-in-law. I didn't even see him, just heard him. Zoe's whole little body went still. She let go of my hand and backed away and went without another word. I never did hear the end of that sentence. Grandma, don't forget to check your what. I turned it over in my mind for exactly 2 seconds, and then my broken heart swallowed it whole because that's what a broken heart does. It doesn't let you notice anything but itself. I picked up my purse. I left the cake on the counter. I told myself at least the children would eat it. I kept the pearls. I don't know why. Pride, maybe. I wasn't going to leave 3 generations of women in that cold house. At the door, I turned around. I gave my only child one more chance to take it back. She was standing in the middle of that big, beautiful kitchen I had helped pay for, arms folded, looking at the floor. She didn't look up. Happy birthday, Denise, I said, and I closed the door. The drive home, I didn't cry. I want you to understand that because I think it matters. I was too far past crying. Crying is for hurt. What I felt was more like a death. I got back to my apartment, a little 2-bedroom I've had for 15 years since I sold the family house after my husband passed, and I sat down at my kitchen table, and I got out a box I keep in the hall closet. I'm a math teacher, like I told you. I keep records. Every check I ever wrote for that girl, every wire transfer, every receipt going back 41 years. I didn't get it out because I doubted her. I got it out because when a person is drowning, sometimes they reach for the one thing in the room they know how to hold. And what I know how to hold is numbers. So I sat there and I added it up. All of it. The inhalers, the France trip, the 3 changes of college major I paid for without a word. The first wedding, 300 guests, $20,000. The down payment on the house, $90,000. The kitchen, $11,000. The medical spa she opened, $170,000 I pulled out against my own condo that I never saw a dollar of back. The twin school, the car, the emergencies. The total, when I finally set my pencil down, was $210,000. $210,000 over 41 years, and it had bought me a seat on a stool in a cold kitchen, and the word disappear. And I'll tell you what happened inside me then because it's the truth, even though I know now it was built on a lie. Something in me that had been asleep for a very long time opened one eye. Not rage exactly. Something quieter and harder than rage. Clarity. The clarity of a woman who has just realized she has been spending herself dollar by dollar and year by year on someone who looked at all of it and called it a burden. I thought if she wants me gone, then gone I'll be. The next morning at 6 o'clock, I did 3 things I had never in my life done before. I picked up my phone and I blocked my daughter's number. Then I blocked Reginald's. My thumb didn't even shake. I called the bank and I closed the joint account we'd kept for emergencies, the one I'd been feeding for years. There was $6,000 in it. I moved every cent into my own name. And then I sat down at my computer and I started looking at a little coastal town I'd driven through exactly once 40 years ago on my honeymoon. a town with live oaks and Spanish moss and a slow brown river. Savannah. I didn't stage anything dramatic. I know some folks would have made a whole production, a mysterious empty apartment, a note a neighbor gasping. That's not me. I just made up my mind to go. I called my neighbor, Gloria Jenkins, who's known me 20 years and knew everything I'd ever done for that child, and I asked her to keep an eye on my mail. She came over with a coffee cake and sat at my table and held both my hands while I told her, and when I finished, she was quiet a long time. "Loretta," she finally said, "after everything you gave that girl—" "After everything," I said. "You go," she said. "You go and you live. You've been dying by inches in this apartment for that child for 15 years. You go." So I went. I gave notice on the apartment. I sold what I couldn't carry. I packed 2 suitcases with the things that were actually mine. My mother's pearls, my father's Bible, 34 years of grade books I couldn't bring myself to throw out, and the turquoise coat. I want you to remember that coat, because folded up in the pocket of that coat, right where my daughter's hand had brushed it in the doorway, there was a piece of paper I did not know was there. It rode with me the whole 300 miles to Savannah. It hung in my new closet for 3 weeks while I hated my daughter with everything I had left. And when I finally found it, it changed the entire story. But that comes later. For now, all you need to know is what I knew then, that my only child had asked me to vanish, and I had loved her enough or been hurt enough to do it. I thought I was the woman who'd been thrown away. I had it exactly backwards. 3 weeks into my new life, I did my laundry. That's how it happened. Not lightning, not a phone call in the night. Laundry. It was a Tuesday, and the Savannah heat had finally broken, and I decided the turquoise coat needed washing before I put it away for the season. I went through the pockets the way my mother taught me. Always check the pockets. "Loretta, you'll wash a $5 bill into confetti," and my fingers found something folded down in the left one. A piece of paper, folded in quarters, small pressed flat like it had been hidden in a hurry. I unfolded it standing at the washing machine, and I knew the handwriting before I finished. That slanted, hurried hand. My daughter's. She'd written it fast, pressing so hard the pen had torn the paper in one spot. "Mama, don't argue. Just go. Don't trust the money. I'm sorry. Signed D." I read it 4 times. I stood there in my little laundry room with the machine already filling behind me, and I read those 11 words over and over. Don't argue. But I hadn't argued. She'd told me to disappear, and I'd disappeared. Just go. I had gone. Don't trust the money. What money? Whose money? The $210,000. My money. Her money. I'm sorry. That was the one that stopped me. Because a woman who wants her mother gone doesn't apologize. A woman who's tired of you doesn't slip a note into your coat pocket in the half-second she brushes past you in a doorway. I stood there, and I remembered her hand touching my coat quick and how warm it had made me feel, and I felt the floor tilt a little under me. But here's the thing, and I'm not proud of it. I didn't act. Not yet. 3 weeks of hating her had built something in me, a wall, and one note wasn't going to knock it down. I told myself she was manipulating me even now. I told myself don't trust the money was some game, some new angle. I folded the note back up and I put it on the kitchen windowsill next to the little pot of basil I was trying to keep alive, and I told myself I was done. But I couldn't stop looking at it. All that week, every time I filled the kettle, there it was. I'm sorry. Written by a woman who 3 weeks before had looked like she hated herself more than she hated me. I'm a math teacher. When the numbers don't add up, you don't blame the numbers. By Friday, I picked up the phone. I didn't call her. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't ready to call her. What I did was start pulling threads one at a time, the way you do when something is bothering you and you can't say what. I called the bank first. Not the big joint account. I'd closed an older one, the emergency account Denise and I had opened together years back that I'd half forgotten about. I wanted to see the last few statements. The woman who helped me was named Yvette Carter, and she'd known me for years. "Miss Coleman," she said, "good to hear your voice. What can I do for you?" "I want to look at the activity on that old account," I said. "The joint one, mine and my daughter's, going back a couple of years." I heard her typing. Then a pause. A pause that went on a little too long. "Miss Coleman," she said slowly, "can I ask, were you aware there's a third card on this account?" A third card. I hadn't touched that account in ages. "There should be 2, mine and Denise's." "There's a supplemental card," Yvette said. "Added about 2 years ago. It's in the name of Reginald Whitfield." The kitchen went very quiet. "And the withdrawals," she went on, careful now, the way you talk to someone standing near an edge. Miss Coleman, nearly all the activity for the past 2 years is on that third card. Withdrawals, transfers out. Almost every one. And my daughter's card, I asked. Denise's. More typing. Another pause. Her card hasn't been used in 20 months, Yvette said. Not once. I sat down at my kitchen table. I had spent a year believing my daughter was bleeding me dry through that account. A year. And she hadn't touched it in 20 months. The withdrawals I'd been quietly resenting, the ones I told myself proved she only ever wanted my money, those were his. Every one of them was his. I thanked Yvette. I hung up, and I pulled the next thread. I called Gloria back in Atlanta, my neighbor, my friend, and I asked her something I'd never thought to ask before. Gloria, I said, this past year, when Denise stopped calling me back, did she ever call you? Gloria was quiet for a second. Loretta, she said. She called me 4 times this spring, asking about you, how you were, whether you were eating right, whether your blood pressure was behaving. She stopped. She made me promise not to tell you she'd called. Why, my voice didn't sound like mine. She said, and I didn't understand it at the time, I swear to you, she said he checks my phone. If he sees I called her, it'll be worse. Gloria's voice wobbled. I thought she was talking about him being jealous of the time. I didn't think, Loretta, I didn't think it was... I know, I said. I didn't either. I hung up. My hands were cold now. I got up and I stood at the window with my daughter's note in my hand, and I read it again. Don't trust the money. The money. The medical spa. I still had every document from that loan, $170,000 I'd pulled against my own condo to open Denise's medical spa 8 years ago. I dug the folder out of the box, and somewhere in the back of my mind, a small, cold voice said, look at the paperwork from the last couple of years. Not the loan, the ownership. It took me 2 days and 3 phone calls to the county and the state to get copies of the current filings. When they came, I spread them across the kitchen table under the good light, the way I used to lay out a test I suspected a student had cheated on. 8 months ago, the medical spa had been used as collateral against a private business loan. A big one. My daughter's name was on the paperwork as the one who'd pledged it. But I know my daughter's signature. I have 41 years of birthday cards and permission slips and thank you notes to know it by. And the signature on that document was not hers. It was close. Somebody had practiced it. But the D was wrong. She loops the D, always has since 3rd grade, and this D didn't loop. Somebody had forged my daughter's name to borrow money against the business I bought her. I sat back in my chair. There was a woman who'd know more. Tanya Brooks had managed that medical spa since the day it opened. I'd interviewed her myself, back when I still went in on Saturdays to help Denise with the books. If anybody had watched that business change hands in the dark, it was Tanya. I found her number in my old address book, and I called it, and when she heard my voice, she got so quiet I thought the call had dropped. Miss Coleman, she said finally. Lord, Miss Coleman, I have been praying somebody in this family would call me. Tanya, I said, tell me what's been happening in my daughter's business. She told me. She told me it had been more than a year since Denise made a single decision at her own spa. That Mr. Whitfield started coming in about 18 months ago, first just helping with the numbers, then signing the checks, then hiring and firing, then changing the locks on the office and keeping the only key. She told me Denise had gotten quiet and small, that she'd stopped eating lunch with the girls, that she flinched when her phone buzzed. And then Tanya's voice dropped so low I had to press the phone to my ear. Miss Coleman, I have to tell you something, and I've been carrying it around for months. Back in the spring, Denise came in one afternoon when he wasn't there. First time in weeks I'd seen her alone. She grabbed my hand right at the front desk in front of a client, and she said real fast and real quiet, Tanya, if my mother ever comes in here, if she ever asks you, tell her the numbers aren't real. Tell her none of the numbers are real. Tanya took a breath. Then he walked in and she let go of my hand and started smiling like nothing happened. And I never got to ask her what she meant. I've been sick about it ever since. Don't trust the money, the note, the numbers aren't real. She'd been trying to tell me the same thing 3 different ways to 3 different people, hoping one of them would reach me. My daughter had been leaving messages in bottles for months, throwing them out into the dark, praying her mother would find one and start swimming toward her. Tanya, I said. Thank you. You've been a good friend to her. I should have done more, she said, and I heard her start to cry. So should I told her. So should I. I got out the old photo albums. I don't know why instinct, the same instinct that had me pulling threads all week. I found pictures from the last 2 Christmases, the last 2 birthdays, the few times I'd seen her. And now, looking with different eyes, I saw what I hadn't let myself see. My daughter getting thinner. My daughter's smile getting tighter. My daughter in a long-sleeved blouse in July. My daughter standing half a step behind her husband in every single picture, like a woman who'd learned where the safe place to stand was. The clues were all there. They'd been there the whole time. In the doorway, in the kitchen. In the tea she'd brewed for me, peppermint, the only kind I can drink, set out with 2 cups, because some part of her had wanted even then to sit down and have tea with her mother and tell her the truth, and she couldn't, because there was a man behind the study door. She glanced at that door. I remembered it now. Right before she said the cruel thing, she glanced at the door. She said it because he was listening. She said the cruelest thing she could think of in the cruelest way she could say it, because it was the only thing that would make me leave and stay gone. If she'd been kind, I'd have kept coming back. I'd have kept calling. I'd have stayed in range. She knew her mother. She knew the only way to get me out of that house for good was to break my heart so badly I'd never return. The birthday scene was staged. Every word of it. I put my head down on my kitchen table in Savannah, 300 miles from my child, and for the first time since that day I cried. But I still didn't understand why. I knew she'd pushed me away on purpose. I didn't yet know what she was pushing me away from. And then 2 pieces of mail arrived that turned my blood to ice water, and I understood that whatever this was, it wasn't only about Denise. It was about me. The first was a forwarded letter from my old condo association in Atlanta, the little condo I'd mortgaged for the medical spa, the one still in my name. It was a notice thanking the owner's representative for the recent request for a property appraisal and a full title record, and confirming the documents had been sent. I had not requested any appraisal. I had not authorized any representative. Somebody calling himself my representative had been quietly gathering the paperwork on everything I owned. The second was worse. It was a form from my own doctor's office, the routine kind they mail when someone requests your records. It thanked me for my request and asked me to confirm the release of my complete medical history, including any evaluations of cognitive function, to a third party. I hadn't requested a thing. But somebody wanted my medical records. Somebody wanted a paper trail about my mind. I sat at that table for a long time with those 2 letters side by side. A man I'd trusted with my grandchildren was building a file. On my property, on my finances, on my mind. Someone was assembling piece by piece the picture of an old woman who couldn't be trusted to manage her own affairs. An old woman who'd suddenly sold everything and run off to another state, which is exactly what a confused, declining woman might do. Except I hadn't run because I was confused. I'd run because my daughter made me. And now I was starting to see the shape of the thing she'd made me run from. I just couldn't yet believe it was as ugly as it was. For that, I needed a lawyer. His name was Vernon Ellis, an Atlanta attorney, older, careful, the kind of man who takes his glasses off to think. I called him because his name was on a card I'd found tucked inside that same medical spa folder, a card I had never put there. Someone else had slipped it in. I called the number, half expecting a wrong number. Mr. Ellis, I said. My name is Loretta Coleman. I'm Denise Whitfield's mother. I found your card in my... Mrs. Coleman. He cut me off, and his voice changed the instant he heard my name. Went quiet and urgent all at once. I have been hoping you would call for 4 months. Are you somewhere safe? Are you alone? Yes, I'm in Savannah. I'm alone. Good, he said. Good. Mrs. Coleman, your daughter came to see me back in the spring. She retained me. She paid my fee in cash so there'd be no record her husband could find, and she made me promise that if her mother ever called, I would tell her everything. He took a breath. There are things you need to understand, and I need you to sit down before I say them. I was already sitting. Say it, I said. Your daughter did not push you away because she was tired of you. I'm starting to see it, I said. My voice was shaking. The forged signature, the account, and there were letters somebody pulled the records on my condo. Somebody asked my doctor for my history, my cognitive history. He's coming for what's mine. He's trying to make me look like I've lost my mind so he can take everything I own. That's it, isn't it? That's what she was pushing me away from. There was a silence on the line. Mrs. Coleman, Ellis said gently, you've got most of it. Reginald filed a petition 4 months ago to have you declared mentally incompetent and to be appointed the conservator of your entire estate. Your pension, your condo, your name on that house. Everything. You figured that much out on your own, sitting at your kitchen table, which I'll tell you is the surest proof in the world that there's nothing wrong with your mind. Then I know the worst of it, I said. No, he said. and his voice dropped and something in it made the hair stand up on my arms. No, ma'am, you don't, because a conservatorship only pays while you're alive. And 2 weeks before your daughter's birthday, your son-in-law contacted an insurance broker. He was asking about taking out a life insurance policy on you. Silence. I want you to sit in that silence the way I sat in it, because there are no words to put in it. There was just the fan turning and my own breath and 300 miles of highway between me and my child and the slow, terrible understanding of what I was hearing. A conservatorship to take everything I owned while I was alive, and a policy to collect when I wasn't. Mrs. Coleman, Vernon Ellis said very quietly, your daughter found the paperwork. That's when she came to me. She understood 2 things at once. She understood what her husband was planning, and she understood that as long as you were close by visiting, calling in his reach and his sightline, you were a target he could work on. The conservatorship needs you nearby and cooperative. It needs you to look dependent. It needs you to look like a woman who can't manage her own life. So she made me leave, I whispered. She made you leave, he said. She made you cut her off block, the numbers move away and start managing everything on your own 300 miles out of his reach. She turned you into a woman living independently, handling her own affairs in another state. He paused. Do you understand what that is? Mrs. Coleman, legally a competent woman running her own life, is the one thing that destroys a petition claiming she can't. Your daughter didn't throw you away. She built you a wall out of the only bricks she had, and the cruelest thing she could say to you was the strongest brick she owned. Don't trust the money. The note. Just go. I'm sorry. The note in your pocket, Ellis said. She told me she slipped you a note. She wasn't sure you'd ever find it. She said if you did, and if you were the woman she believed you were, you'd start pulling on the thread, and you'd end up here, on this phone call. I looked at the note on my windowsill, torn where she'd pressed too hard, and I understood finally all at once that my daughter had spent the worst afternoon of both our lives protecting me. That she had stood in that kitchen and made herself into a monster in her own mother's eyes, had taken the one thing she'd said to me at 16, "You're the best mama in the world," and buried it so that I would run far enough and fast enough to be safe. She hadn't been discarding me. She'd been throwing herself between me and a man who was planning my funeral. I need to tell you about the next hour because it was the worst hour of my entire life, and I have had some bad ones. It was not the birthday. It was not the word disappear. The worst hour of my life was sitting at that kitchen table in Savannah holding the phone after Vernon Ellis hung up and understanding what I had done. My daughter had done the hardest thing a person can do. She had let her own mother believe she was cruel and ungrateful, and Cold had let me drive away hating her because it was the only way she knew to keep me alive. And what had I done with the gift she gave me at the cost of her own heart? I had blocked her number. And I had sat 300 miles away for 3 months, and nursed my hurt and told anyone who'd listen how my daughter had thrown me out like old furniture. I had believed the worst thing about her. The one person on this earth who had loved me enough to make me hate her, and I had taken that love, and I had called it betrayal, and I had turned my back and been proud of it. Don't call, don't come by, don't send anything. I'd thought she was pushing me out of her life. She was pushing me out of the blast radius. And I had walked out of it, and then bolted the door behind me from the outside so that when she needed me, if something went wrong, if he found out what she'd done, she had no way in the world to reach me. Her calls would hit a wall. Her mother's number blocked. Her mother unlisted in a town nobody knew with the phone screening out the only voice that mattered. I had spent 3 months making myself unreachable to the child who saved my life. I got up from the table so fast the chair went over backward. I don't remember deciding to move. I just know I was standing and my hands were shaking and I was saying her name out loud in an empty kitchen. Denise, Denise, baby, what did you do? What did you do to yourself for me? Because that's the thing I understood in that hour, the thing that put me on my knees on my own kitchen floor. She was still there. I had gotten out. She was still in that house with that man, and she had made sure I couldn't see it. Couldn't call, couldn't help, because if I'd known I'd have come running. And if I'd come running, his whole plan would have needed me back in range, and she couldn't risk it. She'd sealed me out for my own safety, and sealed herself in for the same reason. I thought I was the one who'd been thrown away. She was the one still inside the fire. She'd just made sure her mother was standing safe on the lawn, believing the worst of her so she wouldn't run back in. I found my phone. My hands were barely working. I unblocked her number, my thumb hit it wrong twice before it took, and I called her. It rang. It rang 4 times. And then a voice that was not my daughter's answered my daughter's phone. "Hello." A woman, older, kind and tired. A stranger. "Is someone there?" "This is a nurse." This phone was in the patient's bag. The floor came up toward me. "What patient?" I said. "Whose bag? Where is my daughter? Where is Denise?" "Ma'am," the nurse said gently, "are you family? You'll want to come. You'll want to come as soon as you can." I don't remember packing. I remember the nurse's voice telling me the name of the hospital Piedmont in Atlanta, and I remember being in my car on I-16 in the dark, with no memory of how I'd gotten there. 2 suitcases had taken me 3 days to pack when I moved to Savannah. Getting back to my daughter took me about 4 minutes in a pair of house shoes I didn't change out of until morning. It's a 5-hour drive from Savannah to Atlanta. I made it in 4.5, both hands white on the wheel, and I'll tell you what I did the whole way. I talked to God and I talked to my daughter, and I said the same thing to both of them, over and over. Let me get there. Let me get there. Don't you dare take her before I can tell her I know. Don't you dare let her die thinking her mother believed she was cruel. Somewhere outside Macon, my phone rang. Vernon Ellis. I answered on the speaker with my voice already breaking. "Mrs. Coleman, I just heard. I'm so sorry, I'm driving in too." "What happened?" I said. "You tell me what happened to my child." He was quiet for a second, choosing his words the way careful men do. From what I've been able to piece together, Denise had been copying documents. The forged loan papers the bank records the insurance correspondence. Building her own file, same as you were, only from the inside. She kept it hidden. And last night, Reginald found it. I made a sound I didn't know I could make. He confronted her, Ellis said. It got physical. A neighbor heard it and called the police, and the police called an ambulance. Mrs. Coleman, she's alive. I need you to hear that first. She's alive. She's got a concussion and a fractured wrist, and she's going to be badly bruised for a while, but she is alive, and Reginald is in custody as of about 2 hours ago. I was crying so hard I had to slow the car down. And Mrs. Coleman, he paused. There's a timing to this I think you should know. Denise didn't just happen to get caught. 3 days ago she called my office. First time in months she'd managed to call me herself. She said, and my paralegal took the message down word for word. She said, I think my mother's finally out. I think she's safe. I can move now. He let that sit. She'd been holding still for months, Mrs. Coleman, playing dead, waiting until she was sure you were far enough away that he couldn't use you against either of us. The minute she believed you were safe, she started fighting, and that's what got her caught. I want you to understand what that did to me there in the dark on that highway. My daughter had been holding her breath underwater for months, waiting for the one signal that would tell her it was safe to come up swinging. And the signal she was waiting for was me. My safety was the starting gun. The day I finally got far enough out of his reach was the day she finally moved, and moving is what nearly killed her. I had spent 3 months believing I was the one she threw away. And the truth was I had been her whole strategy. She stayed down until I was clear. She could not save herself until she had saved me first. And I thought about all the little cruelties of that last year that I'd added up in the wrong column. The forgotten birthday that was really a phone taken away. The short-clipped calls that were really a woman talking with a man 3 feet behind her. The Christmas she couldn't make it that I'd taken as proof she'd outgrown me. Every single one of them I'd read as my daughter doesn't love me anymore. And every single one of them had really been my daughter is drowning and can't call out. I'd had a whole year of evidence in front of me, and I'd solved the equation wrong because I'd started from the wrong assumption. Start from the wrong assumption, and every fact in the world will lead you to the wrong answer. I teach that. I taught that for 34 years, and I'd done it to my own child. I pressed that gas pedal down and I drove. I got to Piedmont at 4 in the morning. They wouldn't let me back to see her yet. She was sleeping off the concussion they said in stable. And the best thing I could do was wait. So I sat in a plastic chair in a waiting room the color of weak coffee in my house shoes, and I waited for the sun to come up. Vernon Ellis found me there at 6. He was younger in person than he'd sounded, a tall black man with gray at his temples and a briefcase he set down like it weighed 100 pounds. He sat next to me, and he didn't say anything for a minute. Then he opened the briefcase. Mrs. Coleman, he said, while we wait, I need to show you what your daughter built, because you're going to need to be strong for the next part, and I think it'll help you to see that she was never the woman you thought she was in that kitchen. Not for 1 second. He laid it out on the empty chair between us. Denise's file, the one she'd died a little to protect. Photocopies of the forged loan documents with Denise's own handwriting in the margins circling the fake signature, noting the date, noting where she'd been that day, proving she couldn't have signed it. Statements from the joint account with Reginald's supplemental card highlighted in yellow. A copy of the guardianship petition against me with sticky notes where Denise had written questions to ask a lawyer. And a single sheet of paper folded small that made my breath catch, because it was in her handwriting, and it was addressed to me. If Mama is reading this, it means it worked. It means she got out and she got curious and she found somebody to help her. Mama, I'm sorry for what I had to say. I practiced it in the mirror so I could get through it without crying. It was the hardest thing I ever did. But I couldn't warn you because if he'd known you knew he'd have moved faster. The only way to protect you was to make you hate me enough to run. I hope one day you'll understand it was the biggest I love you I had in me. Signed D. I held that piece of paper in a hospital waiting room, and I wept until I couldn't see. And that is when Reginald's lawyer walked in. I didn't know that's who he was at first. A man in a good suit followed by two others, and behind them, I stood up so fast the file slid off the chair behind them, out on bond already in a clean shirt. Like nothing had happened was Reginald himself. He saw me. And this is the part I want you to remember because it tells you everything about the kind of man he was. He didn't flinch. He didn't look ashamed. He smiled. That same easy, even reasonable smile I'd heard in his voice through a study door. "Loretta," he said, spreading his hands warm as Sunday. "Thank God you're here. This whole thing has been a nightmare. Denise has been, you know how she gets, she's been under so much stress she got worked up and she fell. And now the police have twisted it into something ugly, and there's this lawyer filling her head with 'Loretta, we're family.' Let's not let strangers tear this family apart. Come sit down. Let me explain everything." And for 1 second, I'll be honest with you, the old me almost sat down. 41 years of being the woman who smooths things over, who keeps the peace, who gives everybody one more chance. That woman almost sat down in that chair. But I'm not her anymore. I bent down. I picked up my daughter's file off the floor, and I walked right up to that man close enough to see the smile start to falter at the edges, and I set one piece of paper on top of the others and held it up so he could see it. The guardianship petition. His guardianship petition. The one where he'd sworn under oath that I, Loretta Mae Coleman, 34 years a mathematics teacher, was too far gone in my mind to manage my own affairs. "Reginald," I said, and my voice did not shake. "You filed papers with a court in this state saying I'd lost my mind. You had somebody pull my medical records. You wanted a judge to believe I was a confused old woman who couldn't be trusted." The smile was gone now. "So let me tell you what a confused old woman managed to do in 3 months, he said. "She found the third card on that account. She found the forged signature on the spa loan you should have had somebody who'd seen Denise sign her name Reginald. She's looped that D since the 3rd grade. She found the appraisal you ordered on her condo and the medical records you tried to steal. She found the insurance broker, and she found a lawyer of her own." I leaned in. "Does that sound like a woman who's lost her mind, or does it sound like exactly the woman you should have been afraid of?" He opened his mouth. His lawyer put a hand on his arm. "You wanted a court to believe I couldn't take care of myself," I said. "You're about to find out I can take care of my whole family, including from you." Vernon Ellis was on his feet now, and he was already talking about the emergency protective order filed at midnight about the domestic violence charge with a hospital's documentation behind it, about the forgery, about the financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, which in the state of Georgia is its own crime and carries its own prison time. He talked about the insurance inquiry. He talked about the pattern. And I watched the exact moment Reginald Whitfield understood that the weapon he'd built to bury me, the story of a frail, incompetent old woman with money worth taking, was the very thing that was going to convict him. Because the whole case rested on me being helpless. And I was standing in front of him with his own paperwork in my hand, having taken his entire operation apart at my kitchen table 300 miles away, with nothing but a box of receipts and a note in my coat pocket. They took him back into custody that afternoon. He didn't smile on the way out. There was one more piece to it, and I want to tell you about it, because it's the part that closed the door for good. A few days later, a woman named Priscilla Hayes came to see me at the hospital. She was from Adult Protective Services, and my stomach dropped when she introduced herself, because the last thing I wanted was another government office deciding what an old woman could and couldn't do. But she sat down across from me with a folder of her own and a tired, kind face, and she explained. "Mrs. Coleman, a report was opened on you some months back," she said. "The referral came in suggesting you were showing signs of cognitive decline, and making unsafe financial decisions, selling property, moving suddenly, isolating yourself. She watched me carefully. I want you to know who made that referral. It came in through a paper trail your son-in-law set up. He was building a case with us, too. He wanted a state agency to be the ones to say you couldn't be trusted, so it wouldn't just be his word in that guardianship petition. It would be ours. I felt the old fear flare up, and then I looked at this woman's face, and I saw she was on my side. So I have to ask you some questions, she said gently. It's just procedure, and then I'm going to write my report. She asked me the date, and I gave it to her, and the season, and who the governor was, and to count backward from 100 by 7s, which I did faster than she could write it down, because I have been doing arithmetic in my head since Eisenhower was president. She asked me to explain what had happened with my finances over the past 3 months, and I laid it out for her the same way I'd laid it out for Reginald the third card, the forged D, the appraisal, the insurance broker, the lawyer I'd found. By the time I finished, she had set her pen down and she was just looking at me. Mrs. Coleman, she said, in 11 years of doing this work, I have rarely sat across from anyone any age as sharp as you are. I'm going to write that in my report in exactly those words. This case is closed, and it's closed in a way that means he can never open it again. And his referral is going in the file as what it was false and made in bad faith. She almost smiled. The thing he built to prove you'd lost your mind is now the official record proving you never did. I thanked her. And after she left, I sat by my sleeping daughter, and I thought about how close it had come. A story had been built about me, a frail, confused, declining old woman, and it had very nearly become the truth in the eyes of a court, a bank and agency, a family. The only thing that broke it was a woman refusing to be the story somebody else wrote for her. I had spent my whole life being written by other people. Denise's mother, Reginald's Mark, the old lady who could be counted on to pay. And it took being pushed 300 miles away alone to finally pick up the pen myself. They let me back to see her a little after noon. I want to slow down here because I've been rushing, and this is the part I would live inside forever if I could. The room was dim, the blinds half drawn against the Atlanta glare. There were machines making their soft sounds. And there was my daughter, small in the bed, her wrist in a cast, a bruise spreading dark along one cheekbone, her eyes closed. 41 years old, and she looked 11 again, the way she'd looked on the bathroom floor with the shower running, fighting for air. I sat down in the chair beside her, and I took her good hand in both of mine, careful, and I just held it. I didn't want to wake her. I wanted her to sleep. I wanted to sit there and be her mother in the room for as long as they'd let me, making up for 3 months in whatever minutes I had. But she felt me. Mothers know their children's hands, and I suppose children know their mothers too. Her eyes came open slow, and they found me, and I watched her face go through everything at once. Fear first, because fear was where she lived now, and then confusion. And then when she was sure it was really me, something cracked open in her that she'd been holding shut for months. "Mama," she whispered. Her voice was wrecked. "Mama, you're here. How are you? You're not supposed to, did you?" She started to cry, and crying hurt her, and she couldn't stop. "You understand now. Please tell me you understand." I couldn't tell you. I'm so sorry. I've been so... I found it, baby. I got the words out somehow. I found the note in my coat. 3 months late. Your poor mama took 3 whole months. But I found it. I understand everything. I know what you did. I know why you did it. I know all of it. I said such awful things to you. She was shaking. I practiced them. I practiced being cruel to you in the mirror. What kind of daughter? The kind who loved her mother enough to break her own heart to save her, I said. Don't you dare apologize to me. Do you hear me? You saved my life. You reached out of that terrible house with everything you had, and you pushed me clear, and you did it knowing I'd hate you for it. There is no braver thing a person has ever done for me in 68 years on this earth. So you will not lie in that bed and call yourself a bad daughter. I won't have it. She was quiet a while, working up to something, and when it came out in pieces. She told me a little of what those months had been, how she'd figured out what he was planning back in the winter, when she'd found the guardianship papers in his desk while looking for the twins' birth certificates. How she'd understood in one cold minute that the man she'd married was going to have her mother declared insane, drain everything she owned. And she couldn't finish that sentence, and she didn't have to. How she'd gone to Vernon Ellis in secret and paid him in cash and started copying documents a page at a time whenever Reginald left the house. How she'd lived every day terrified he'd noticed the copier was warm. "And the tea," she whispered. "Mama, the tea? I brewed you the peppermint that morning because I thought maybe I could get 5 minutes with you before he came out of that study. I thought maybe I could sit you down and pour you a cup and just tell you everything fast and beg you to trust me. I had it all planned. And then he came out early, and I heard his footsteps, and I knew there was no 5 minutes. There was no telling you. There was only getting you out of that house and out of this city as fast and as far as I could." Her face crumpled. "So I poured your tea, and I said the worst thing I have ever said to another human being, and I watched it land on your face, and I have seen your face every single night since. I thought about that teapot. 2 cups set out. A daughter who'd planned to tell her mother the truth over tea, and instead had to send her away with a knife. I put my forehead down against her good hand, and I stayed there a long moment. 'You set out 2 cups,' I said. 'I saw them, and I couldn't understand how the same girl who'd say what you said would set out 2 cups of my tea. It didn't add up. That's the thing that started bothering me baby way underneath. 2 cups of peppermint tea. You left me a clue with your own hands, and you didn't even mean to.' 'I meant to love you,' she said. 'I only ever meant to love you.' 'I know that now,' I said. 'I know it all the way down.' We held on to each other, and we cried, the 2 of us, careful of the cast and the machines, and it was not pretty, and it was not gentle. It was the ugly, heaving kind of crying that comes out of a place that's been locked for a long time. It was 3 months, and it was a year, and honestly it was probably 41 years, all of it coming out at once. When we finally quieted, I reached into my purse. I'd carried them the whole way from Savannah without even thinking about why. My mother's pearls in their silver box. The gift I'd tried to give her on the worst day of both our lives and taken back home out of pride. 'I brought these on your birthday,' I said, opening the box. 3 generations of hard women who kept going when they had every reason to quit. I was going to give them to you, and then, well, you know what happened then." I lifted them out and laid them in her good hand. "I want you to have them now, because you're the hardest and the bravest of all of us, and I should have seen it a long time ago. I'm sorry it took me so long to see who you really are." She closed her fingers around the pearls, and she held them to her chest, and she couldn't say anything at all. And that's when the door opened, and 2 11-year-olds who'd been waiting with Gloria down the hall couldn't wait one more second. And Jaden and Zoe came running in and climbed up onto the bed as gentle as their grandmother had taught them. And my daughter had her mother on one side and her children on the other. And for the first time in a very long time, nobody in that room was afraid. Zoe looked up at me with those big, serious eyes. "Grandma?" she said. "Did you check your coat pocket? Mama told me to remind you. I tried to tell you at the birthday, but—" "I checked it, baby," I said, and I pulled her in close. "You're Mama's smartest helper. I checked it. It just took me a little while. I'd like to tell you it all wrapped up neat as a bow. It didn't. Real life doesn't. Reginald took a plea rather than face a jury, and he's serving his time, but the money he ran through is mostly gone the way that kind of money goes into deals that never existed. The medical spa was too far underwater to save. It closed. The insurance policy he was chasing never got written, thank God, but the guardianship fight and the fraud left a mountain of legal bills behind it. When the dust settled and the house was sold and my name came off that deed at last, I got back $52,000 of the $90,000 I'd put in. Not a fortune, not the $210,000 I'd spent over a lifetime. Just enough when I added it to my pension and what little I had left to buy a small house in Savannah with a porch and a magnolia tree and room enough for a daughter and 2 grandchildren to come live in it. Because that's what happened. Denise and the twins moved down to Savannah with me. She's in therapy now, the real kind, twice a week, with a good woman who specializes in what she's been through. She still flinches when a door closes too hard. She still gets quiet sometimes, and I have to remind her she's allowed to take up space in a room. Healing isn't a straight line. Some mornings are hard, but most mornings I wake up to the sound of my grandbabies fighting over the last of the pancakes, and my daughter laughing at them, an actual laugh, the kind I hadn't heard in years. And I lie there and I listen to it, and I think about how close I came to never hearing it again. We've built a life down here, the 4 of us. Denise took a job at a dental office doing the books. She's good with numbers. She gets that from me, and it's quiet work with kind people, and a door she's allowed to lock from the inside. The twins are in the public school 3 blocks over, And Zoe has decided she's going to be a lawyer, which makes Vernon Ellis laugh every time I tell him. He still calls to check on us. Some people you go through a fire with, they stay family after. On Sunday afternoons, we walk down to the river, all four of us, and we get pralines from the little shop on the corner. And Denise holds my arm, not because she needs to, but because she wants to, and I have learned the difference now. There was a whole year I couldn't tell the difference between someone needing me and someone loving me. I'd confused the two so long I thought they were the same thing. They are not the same thing. Love doesn't run you dry. Love holds your arm on the way to the river because the walking is better with you there. I keep the note framed on the windowsill in the kitchen next to a pot of basil that's finally thriving. Mama, don't argue. Just go. Don't trust the money. I'm sorry. Signed CID. Torn where she pressed too hard. 11 words that saved my life that I carried 300 miles without knowing that I almost washed away in a load of laundry. People write to me. Now, I told a little of this story to a group of women my age at the library in Savannah, one rainy Thursday. Just a folding chair kind of talk, and somehow it got passed around, and now the letters come. Women who feel discarded by their grown children. Women who are sure their own daughter or son has simply stopped loving them, has grown cold, has thrown them away like something used up. Some of them are right, and for those women I have a different, harder kind of comfort. But so many of them are reading the equation wrong, the way I did, starting from the wrong assumption and letting every fact fall into the wrong column. And so I tell them all the same thing, the thing my Denise taught me on the worst birthday of both our lives. Before you believe the cruelest thing someone you love has ever said to you, before you let it become the whole story, check your pockets. Look for the note. Ask why. Look at the 2 cups of tea somebody set out with their own hands while their mouth was saying something terrible. Because sometimes the person pushing you away the hardest is the one holding on the tightest in the only way the world has left them. My daughter asked me for one gift. She asked me to disappear. I gave it to her. And in giving it, I nearly lost her forever, and then I found her, and I found myself. And I found out that the most loving thing I ever heard was disguised as the cruelest. She didn't want me gone. She wanted me alive.